The Zylarian Dominion, an ancient alien empire, had always regarded humanity as a trivial species, barely worthy of recognition. With their technologically advanced fleets and centuries of experience in conquest, they saw humans as little more than untested primitives. They marked Earth's outermost colony, Nova 4, for resource extraction, dismissing it as a backwater settlement guarded by insignificant defense forces. The Zylarian commanders expected minimal resistance, a quick, bloodless operation that would leave humans too daunted to resist further incursions. With a cold efficiency, the Zylarian ships entered the Nova 4 system, encircling the small human colony with ease. Their sleek, angular warships descended from orbit, unloading shock troops armed with plasma rifles and armor that could absorb impacts from most Earth-based weaponry. Alien soldiers spread through the colony, hurting human civilians, their strange, warbled voices declaring, "Resistance is futile." Families were forced into containment areas, eyes wide with fear and confusion as they realized this was no drill, no warning exercise. Despite the aliens' overconfidence, a few scattered groups of human soldiers managed to evade capture, taking cover in the colony's dense forests. Led by Sergeant Elena Reyes, a veteran of Earth's defense forces, the soldiers gathered to assess the situation. Reyes was hard-edged, resourceful, and had no intention of surrendering her people without a fight. She activated her shortwave transmitter, hoping to reach Earth Command. "Nova 4 is under attack," Reyes whispered urgently into the device, her voice steady. "They came with no warning, overwhelming us with advanced tech. We're outgunned, but we're not giving up. Requesting immediate reinforcement." Reyes looked around at her ragtag squad, their faces grim but resolute. They were a mix of locals and volunteers, not standard infantry, but every single one of them understood the stakes. If they let the aliens claim this colony without resistance, it would only embolden them to attack more human territories. "We may not have their weapons," Reyes said, her voice low but fierce. "But we know this land better than they do. We can make them regret setting foot on it." With a nod from her, the group began preparing their improvised defenses. As night fell, the first skirmish erupted. The humans had set up traps along narrow paths, placing pressure-triggered explosives salvaged from mining equipment, and using the natural terrain to their advantage. They made no grand displays or open assaults, focusing instead on hit-and-run tactics, silently dismantling smaller alien patrols one by one. Each ambush hit the Zylarians with the same message: they were not as safe as they thought. The Zylarian troops, unfamiliar with guerrilla tactics, struggled to adapt. They weren't prepared for an enemy that could vanish into the shadows, that knew how to blend into the environment, and could strike from seemingly nowhere. For the first time, some Zylarian soldiers experienced fear, seeing their comrades fall to an invisible enemy who attacked with ferocity and precision. Reyes and her team moved like shadows, employing decades-old survival techniques and tactics. In one ambush, they created diversions with smoke grenades, luring the Zylarian forces into a confined canyon where the humans had planted improvised explosives. With a signal from Reyes, the explosives detonated, and Zylarian soldiers were caught in a deadly trap, trapped in fire and rubble. Back on Earth, Command received Reyes's distress signal, and it sparked a deep debate. The leaders knew they were outmatched technologically, but they couldn't ignore the bravery and resilience displayed by the Nova 4 defenders. The images and footage captured from the colony painted a stark picture: an alien force that held no regard for human lives and would keep pressing forward unless met with a unified resistance. Despite concerns about the risks, Command ultimately decided to support the colony. Small, agile ships loaded with backup supplies, old but functional weaponry, and a few elite operatives were dispatched to Nova 4. They were under no illusion about the odds they faced, but every leader understood that this was a test of humanity's mettle. If they failed, it would embolden the Zylarians to see humanity as easy prey. Back on Nova 4, Reyes's forces continued their resistance, emboldened by the knowledge that help was on its way. Her small band of soldiers had started with little more than sheer grit, but now they fought with purpose, knowing that their actions had inspired humanity to stand against this new threat. They moved with determination, dismantling Xylarian's patrols, taking weapons from the fallen aliens, and redistributing them among the defenders. In a whispered moment of respite, one of Reyes's soldiers, a young recruit, asked her why they kept fighting, why they didn't just surrender and hope for mercy. Reyes fixed him with a steely gaze and replied, "Because if we give them an inch, they'll take it all. We're not just fighting for Nova 4. We're fighting for every colony, every family back on Earth. We're showing them what humans are capable of." And so they pressed on, outmatched but undeterred, sowing fear in the hearts of their alien invaders. The Xylarians, who once looked upon humanity with disdain, began to whisper among themselves about these unbreakable humans who fought with everything they had. In the command center back on Earth, a tense silence had settled over the senior officers. They listened intently to the final garbled words from Reyes's transmission, detailing the aliens' overwhelming force and their brutal efficiency. Commander Felix Harrow, head of Earth's strategic defense, absorbed the news with a grim determination. They had been left with no choice. This was not just an invasion of Nova 4. It was an invasion of humanity's very sovereignty. To do nothing would set a dangerous precedent, signaling to the galaxy that humans could be easily conquered. Harrow and his officers worked tirelessly, analyzing what little data they had on the Xylarians. Reports from Reyes's encounters highlighted the Xylarian weaknesses. Despite their advanced technology, they lacked flexibility. They relied heavily on their tech superiority and had little experience with unconventional tactics. Earth Command knew they couldn't match the Xylarian firepower directly, so they decided to exploit these weak points, launching a counterattack that would rely on quick adaptability and leveraging guerrilla warfare on a grand scale. With time running out, Harrow assembled a small, specialized team equipped with unconventional weaponry. The reinforcements were briefed en route, with explicit instructions to use stealth and to prioritize disrupting the Xylarian forces. Among the reinforcements were survival experts, demolition specialists, and a few highly trained tacticians who could outthink the Xylarians' rigid command structure. They were outfitted with lightweight equipment, supplies scavenged from decommissioned units, and even improvised explosives repurposed from old mining charges. Upon arriving at Nova 4, the reinforcements moved like ghosts, linking up with Reyes's remaining forces in the dense forests. She greeted them with silent gratitude, recognizing the grizzled resolve in their eyes. These were people who understood they might not survive but were willing to give everything to ensure the colony's survival. Reyes's team briefed them on the terrain, pointing out the natural choke points, hidden cave networks, and strategic high ground they'd been using to keep the Xylarian forces on edge. Together, they began to lay out an intricate series of traps and fallback routes that would allow them to outmaneuver the technologically superior Xylarians. The first night after reinforcements arrived, the human forces coordinated a series of ambushes across the colony's perimeter. Using small drones outfitted with noise-making devices, they distracted the Xylarians, drawing them into narrow ravines where the humans had planted explosives. With pinpoint timing, Reyes triggered the charges, unleashing a cascade of rocks and debris that left the Xylarians trapped and vulnerable. Her soldiers swarmed in, using their small arms and makeshift weapons to overwhelm the aliens who had been so certain of their dominance. Word of the humans' unrelenting tactics spread among the Xylarian ranks, unsettling even their most hardened soldiers. Used to victories through intimidation and overwhelming power, the Xylarians began to feel a creeping fear. They were facing an enemy who not only refused to submit but also struck back with a ferocity and ingenuity that the aliens had never encountered. No matter how many human fighters fell, others took their place, each one as determined as the last. For every position the Xylarians gained, they faced twice as many casualties as expected. With every encounter, Reyes and her forces refined their tactics. They used the Xylarians' rigid patterns to their advantage, anticipating their movements and setting deadly traps along those paths. The Xylarian technology, once seen as invincible, began to show vulnerabilities. Human sharpshooters identified weak points in the alien armor, targeting exposed joints and sensory equipment, disabling Xylarians at critical moments. Every shot was a statement of defiance, a reminder that humans would not bow. Despite the mounting losses, the Xylarians attempted to adjust their approach, deploying larger patrols and heavier weaponry. But Reyes and her team responded by splintering into smaller units, moving faster and becoming harder to track. They used decoys and holographic projectors salvaged from old tech, making it seem like they had larger forces than they actually did. From hidden vantage points, human soldiers watched the Xylarians waste resources and energy chasing illusions, their frustration growing with each misstep. In one particularly bold move, Reyes orchestrated an assault on a key Xylarian communication outpost. Under cover of darkness, her forces silently infiltrated the perimeter, using cloaking techniques learned from previous encounters. Once inside, they unleashed a barrage of EMP charges that fried the aliens' communication systems, severing their connection to the central command. In the ensuing chaos, Reyes' soldiers took control of the outpost, using the Xylarian equipment to broadcast a message to the alien fleet. "Nova 4 is not yours. We will never surrender." The psychological impact of this message was immediate. The Xylarian commanders, who had dismissed humanity as little more than a nuisance, were forced to confront the reality that they were dealing with a formidable resistance. They realized their invasion was no longer a simple operation. It was an all-out war against an enemy that refused to be broken. For the first time, they considered the possibility of retreat. As Reyes regrouped her forces, she took a moment to assess their situation. Supplies were dwindling, and they had suffered heavy losses, but the spirit of her team remained unshaken. These men and women, once a disparate collection of settlers and soldiers, had been molded by the fires of battle into something indomitable. They were no longer merely defending Nova 4. They were proving to the galaxy that humanity was a force to be reckoned with, one that would fight with every breath. In the Xylarian camp, the tension was palpable. The once confident alien soldiers now moved with hesitation, scanning every shadow, every rustle in the trees. Their commanders issued orders with strained voices, struggling to maintain morale. They had arrived expecting an easy conquest, but now they found themselves on the defensive, hunted by an enemy they had failed to understand. Reyes and her fighters, relentless and unyielding, had turned the tide, forcing the Xylarians to question whether they could ever truly subdue humanity. The human resistance on Nova 4 had done the impossible. They'd forced the Xylarian invaders into a defensive posture. Reyes and her fighters moved with precision, striking at the Xylarians' weakened supply lines, disabling their equipment, and severing their communication channels. Morale among the Xylarian ranks had plummeted, and whispers of human resilience spread like wildfire among the alien troops. Some of the younger Xylarians had even started questioning their commanders, unable to reconcile their belief in superiority with the reality of an unbreakable human resistance. With each encounter, Reyes and her team gained more confidence, refining their tactics further. They used the landscape itself as a weapon, funneling the Xylarian troops into areas that left them vulnerable. Despite lacking advanced technology, the humans capitalized on every strategic weakness they found, targeting the alien troops in terrain that made their weaponry less effective. The colony's dense forests and rocky cliffs provided ample cover, allowing Reyes' team to strike with deadly precision and vanish into the shadows before the Xylarian reinforcements could respond. The Xylarian High Command, increasingly desperate, deployed elite reinforcements, hoping to squash the human resistance once and for all. These new troops were outfitted with reinforced armor and advanced sensory equipment meant to track heat signatures, movement, and even heartbeats. But Reyes' team adapted quickly, using makeshift thermal dampeners, setting decoy traps, and leading the aliens on exhausting chases through the rough terrain. The elite Xylarians found themselves fighting not only against a relentless enemy, but also against the unforgiving landscape, which seemed to conspire with the humans at every turn. Reyes coordinated a final, bold strike to disrupt the heart of the Xylarian operations, a heavily fortified base built near the colony's edge. With precise timing, she and her fighters slipped through their defenses, using the Xylarians' reliance on their technology against them. Human soldiers moved in silence, covered by thick fog rolling in from the nearby cliffs. Explosions erupted within the alien camp as Reyes' team set off a chain reaction of EMP blasts, frying the Xylarian power grids and plunging the base into chaos. Seizing the advantage, Reyes's forces launched a coordinated assault from all sides. The Zylarian soldiers, now blind and disoriented without their technology, were forced to rely on their basic combat skills, which paled in comparison to the raw, unyielding determination of the human fighters. Reyes and her squad moved like a relentless wave, overtaking alien positions and dismantling the Zylarian forces piece by piece. As the battle raged, Reyes made her way to the Zylarian command tent, where the alien commander was desperately issuing orders, trying to regain control of the crumbling operation. She confronted him directly, her presence a stark contrast to the alien leader's shock and disbelief. Before the commander could react, Reyes transmitted a message to the entire Zylarian fleet orbiting above Nova 4. "This is our home. Leave, or we will bring this fight to every one of your worlds." The transmission rippled through the Zylarian fleet, creating panic among their ranks. The notion of humans not only defending themselves but threatening retaliation was unheard of. The Zylarian commander, faced with the reality of a war he couldn't win, gave the order to retreat. Within hours, the alien ships withdrew, disappearing into the vastness of space, leaving Nova 4 battered but unconquered. As the dust settled, Reyes gathered her remaining forces. They were bruised and bloodied, but the weight of victory was palpable among them. For the first time since the invasion began, they allowed themselves to breathe, to acknowledge the enormity of what they had accomplished. Against impossible odds, they had forced a technologically superior enemy to retreat, proving that humanity's strength lay not in advanced weaponry but in the resilience and grit that no alien species could anticipate. Back on Earth, news of the victory spread quickly, and the story of Nova Ivy's defense became a rallying cry across human territories. The message was clear: humanity would not bow, would not yield, and would meet any threat with the fierce tenacity that defined them. Reyes's actions inspired a new era of unity and resolve, marking humanity as a force to be reckoned with in the galaxy. In the Zylarian archives, a note was entered into their historical records, warning future generations of the cost of underestimating humans. It read simply, "Do not give humans a chance to go to war. They will take it further than any of us can imagine." Although the Zylarian ships retreated from Nova 4, the scars left by their invasion remained etched into the landscape and hearts of those who survived. The colony's fields were charred, buildings damaged beyond repair, and yet, in the quiet aftermath, there was a newfound sense of purpose among the humans who had fought and survived. Reyes and her squad moved through the ruined settlement, helping the injured and gathering the fallen with a silent, solemn respect for the sacrifices made. Each survivor understood that they were part of something larger now, a legacy of resilience that would echo far beyond Nova 4. As Reyes returned to Earth with her remaining soldiers, a crowd awaited their arrival at the landing bay. Leaders, officials, families, each person there knew that these men and women had stood against a force that had dismissed humanity as insignificant. Reyes stepped down from her transport, her expression stoic as she faced her superiors. She was greeted with a mixture of admiration and sorrow, a recognition of the strength and pain they had endured in defending not only a colony but a symbol of humanity's defiance. Briefings followed, and Reyes found herself in a war room, surrounded by Earth's top military strategists and scientists, their faces a blend of disbelief and respect. For hours she debriefed, recounting every detail of the guerrilla tactics, the traps, the relentless resistance that had worn down the Zylarians. She shared the hard-earned knowledge that would become crucial in humanity's future defenses, a tactical framework now refined and expanded through the crucible of combat on Nova 4. Realizing the stakes, Earth's leaders knew they couldn't wait for another invasion to strike. They began to implement Reyes's tactical insights, enhancing their own military preparedness, and rethinking their approach to defense and diplomacy. They turned to unconventional warfare specialists, tech developers, and survival experts, working tirelessly to adapt, innovate, and build on the strategies Reyes had used. Humanity was shifting, evolving from a species focused on peaceful progress to one prepared to defend its place among the stars with all the fierce resilience that had defined them. The Zylarian retreat, however, had left a ripple across the galactic community. News spread of the humans who had resisted, A species previously thought to lack the resolve for combat, now revealed as fierce, adaptable warriors. Rumors circulated among other alien civilizations, some of whom considered the Zerian defeat a sign that humanity was to be approached with caution. Others viewed it as an invitation, a test to see how far this resilient species would go if pressed. A coalition of curious alien observers approached the human representatives, seeking to gauge this emerging warrior species. Diplomats, scientists, and soldiers from various systems gathered, each with their own interest in this young civilization that had thrown back the Zerian Empire. Earth opened cautious dialogues with some of them, wary of threats and promises alike. Rhea's and her team's victory had catapulted humanity onto the galactic stage, where respect and tension intertwined, casting them as both potential allies and dangerous adversaries. Months later, Rhea stood before a gathering of recruits who had been inspired by the story of Nova 4. These men and women, from all walks of life, had come to be trained under the strategies that had saved the colony. Reyes addressed them, her voice steady and filled with conviction, urging them to remember the reason for their defense, the necessity of unity, and the price of freedom. Her words carried the weight of lived experience, a rallying cry that instilled a sense of duty, purpose, and resilience within each person listening. In time, Reyes's efforts led to the formation of a new specialized force within Earth's military, known as the Vanguard. This elite unit was trained specifically for asymmetric warfare, unconventional tactics, and extreme adaptability, qualities that had proven invaluable in the Nova 4 resistance. The Vanguard's mission was clear: to prevent another invasion and to remind the galaxy that humanity would defend its own, no matter the cost. Reyes took an active role in their training, instilling the principles of resilience, ingenuity, and unity that had forged their victory. Across the galaxy, the Zylarians tried to erase the memory of their defeat, banning any mention of humanity from public discourse. However, whispers persisted in hidden corners. Where the truth lingered, humans were not to be underestimated. Within their ranks, commanders and soldiers alike shared stories of the colony that had broken their will, the unyielding human soldiers who had turned their technology against them. It was a lesson they would carry in silence, a warning etched into the collective memory of their empire. Humanity, meanwhile, pressed forward with an unspoken resolve, understanding that Nova 4 was only the beginning. They expanded their knowledge, adapted their technology, and fortified their defenses, readying themselves for whatever the galaxy might bring. Reyes's legacy and the resilience of her team became the foundation upon which humanity's future was built, a future that would be defined not by conquest, but by the steadfast refusal to submit to any force that sought to take away their freedom. The phrase, "Never give humans a chance to go to war," became more than just a warning. It became a promise, a silent declaration to all who might threaten them. Humanity's place among the stars was secured, not through fear or conquest, but through the strength of those who had stood firm, fought, and survived. And as new worlds awaited, humanity looked toward the stars, prepared for peace but unafraid of war, knowing they would endure, no matter the cost.